Good afternoon. I'm Rev Dave Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to our Civil Human Bible study today. We're continuing in the book of Matthew. I'm a civil human minister, and what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. And so when I'm approaching this Bible study today, and for this whole series, I have basically two ground rules that I'm trying to operate from. And the first is that I want to help create peace by being civil in the way that I do this research. So that means that I want to respect our basic human needs that we all share. Our needs to believe what we want to about the big unanswered questions, our need to be independent from intimidation, our need to vote, our need to love other people the way we want to and who we want to, and our need to live the way we want to. And second, I want to find common ground by being human. And what I mean by that is by operating from what I feel are the basic human rules of how we should conduct ourselves. I will be honest. I will try to be understandable. I'll offer measurable proof when there's something that I'm claiming. I'll only ask of you what is achievable without suffering. And last, I myself will remain negotiable. So if I need to change my opinion so that we're civil and human, then I will do so. I want to also encourage you as we go through this Bible study. If you're on Facebook, then as we're watching this, please, if you have any questions or need me to clarify or want something cleared up a little bit more, just leave a comment, and I'll be monitoring that feed as well so that I can answer questions live. And if you have questions and you're watching this after it's gone live, then please do leave your questions there, and I'll try to respond to them as quickly as I can. So basically how I structure this Bible study is that I'm going to read the text, and then I'm going to catch us up on what's going on right now in this text. And then I want to talk about some of the cultural issues and the language issues to help clarify what's being said here. And last, I want to offer my paraphrase or translation of this 2,000-year-old text into language and a context that works for all humans across the board. That'll be my intent there. And to give you just a couple of walkaway points, those things that I am walking away from this text feeling like I've learned as a result of it. So let's go ahead and read the text. It's Matthew chapter 10, verse 26 through 31. Matthew 10, 26. There we go. Therefore, do not fear them, for there is nothing covered that will not be revealed, and hidden that will not be known. Whatever I tell you in the dark, speak in the light, and what you hear in your ear, preach on the rooftops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him, or the one, who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground apart from the Father's will? But the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So there's kind of a lot to unravel. I'll be honest, when I approached this text, I was not sure what in the world they're talking about, because he goes from talking about fear and being afraid directly into this whole conversation of something being hidden or covered, and then it being revealed and uncovered. And I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. What's he talking about there? It seems a little ambiguous, and how does that tie into these disciples who are being sent out and this warning to them? So let's catch up on the text real quick. Matthew, who wrote this book 2,000 years ago in the first century, was writing it to the Jewish people. And so he introduces Jesus, and then he gives us the Sermon on the Mount, which is Jesus teaching his basic teachings up on a hill and in front of a crowd. And he essentially says, look, if you want to be happy, if you want a happy society, then we have to follow these basic core virtues. And these virtues are peacemaking, love, compassion, humility, showing self-restraint. Those are the virtues that he's talking about, and trying to encourage the people to not worry about all the religious rituals and that church and synagogue and all these require, but to focus on these virtues instead as their core motive in life. And then Matthew explains to us who Jesus goes to first when he starts his ministry. So the first person he touches is, and literally touches, is a leper who's in that society untouchable. And he ends up reaching out to all these different outcasts. And Matthew here is making a point of that Jesus didn't spend his first days or really at all in his ministry with anybody who was important or wealthy or political or had any sway over what would be the media back then. Jesus focused on the people who had been outcast and left out by society, the people who needed to have people sharing compassion. So now he's called his disciples together. These are his students, and he has essentially 12 core students, and he probably has others, but we're really focusing on the 12 here. And he says, look, it's time for me to send you out, right? It's a field trip. So he is going to give them a lecture on basically what to expect and what to prepare for and how to do it. He's told them, don't take any money with you, don't take extra tunics or a suitcase, rely on people while you're out in the field. As you're ministering, look for those people who can provide for you so that you are not doing things for financial gain, which honestly today is a bit of a wake-up call for many who operated under the guise of ministry. And then Jesus explains to them that they're going to be persecuted, and now he tells us who to fear. His whole explanation in this passage that we're reading today is helping his disciples to deal with fear that they're going to face, because the leaders that I've talked about before, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and other scribes and teachers who are in power right now and who have built a system that provides a very nice way of life for them and a lot of power and influence. Jesus is sidelining that whole process and telling people to just focus on the virtues themselves instead of worrying about all this. So this is a real problem. He's bucking the system and really hitting at the foundations. So they're going to try to do everything they can. And that's what his emphasis is to the disciples here. Now, in the cultural aspect, I think I just highlighted, really there's nothing specific about the time period that would help really bring any relevance to the text beyond noting the religious leaders and the people who were trying to dissuade Jesus and trying to make trouble for his disciples. So I'm going to jump right into the meaning of the words, because there's a lot more there that helped me really understand what's going on here and what in the world Jesus is talking about. So we have this first passage, the verses 26 and 27, and Jesus is talking about who do you fear and not to fear them, and then goes right into this conversation about what is concealed will be revealed, what is covered will be uncovered. And now I was curious about what that meant. So the first thing that I want to point out here, the word to fear is phobeste, which we get the word phobia from, and it essentially means being afraid or fleeing, being spooked, really. It actually derives from a word that means to literally push birds to flight, like in hunting, where they're scared and they get spooked and they fly away. So that's the image that this word connotes. And so Jesus is saying, look, don't flee, don't be afraid, don't worry and run away from these people. And here's why. Why is Jesus saying this? Because these people are making stuff up, right? They're claiming that Jesus is Beelzebub. We talked about this yesterday, that they're claiming that he is this demonic force and that he is pure evil, and that's why he has so much power and is healing people, is because he has the power of the devil or whatever they're trying to accuse him of. It's false. It is absolutely untrue. And the reality of the matter is that Jesus is helping the people that these leaders have abandoned. And they don't like that because it makes them look bad. And so they are in secret conspiring, coming together to talk about ways to attack Jesus, ways to attack his disciples. And the reason why we shouldn't fear that is Jesus's point that is really just, I feel, just the reality of life. Whatever is hidden will become revealed. When we try to do things in secret, when we try to cover up our tracks, when we try to dissuade or to confuse people, eventually the truth comes out. It always does. It always will. And that's why these people should not be afraid of it, because eventually they will be vindicated. Eventually people will understand who was wrong and who was right. And yeah, it's pretty terrible right now because they're being persecuted. But just hold up unto that is what Jesus is saying. Just stand up firm. Do what you're supposed to do. This is something that today is a real concern of mine. And it's not as if, I worked in politics for about 8 years professionally as a consultant doing communications and marketing and all kinds of stuff. But back then, politics was about, it's some conspiring, but not in the horrible sense that it's become today. It was like, planning some things to get a message out before somebody else and it was all about putting a good message out there in the most effective way. But now it seems like it's become this really horrible way for people to secretly come up with these just horrendous lies and just deceptive practices that they think are going to solve the problem and to make them win or to give them power. But the reality is, especially in our information age where really nothing much can remain uncovered in our information age, because everybody has a phone, everybody's got a video, so things are coming out much more quickly than they were before. So I want to encourage you before I go on to the next verse in this part, and I'm going to wrap this up in the end too, but those of you who are facing that discrimination, or you're tired of the people who are misrepresenting the truth and who are making up the most ridiculous accusations against people who are doing good things, that eventually it will come out. That we have to wait for it. That's the unfortunate part, but eventually it will come out. And the difference is between Jesus, and this is why he says, but however, when the things that I've said to you in secret, in the darkness, speak them in the light. What I've whispered in your ear, yell it from the rooftops. Jesus makes a real strong point, and I think a very effective one even today, that we don't operate that way. When we're trying to do good, when we're trying to uphold virtues, and we're trying to do things the right way to be happy and to have a happy society, we have to be honest and upfront and transparent. That's the biggest thing. We have to talk out loud and be willing to be tested, to be willing to be audited, and to see that we are making sure that we're doing it right. As Jesus says, be smart like the serpents are out there, but be blameless as doves. So as those of us who are trying to fight for virtue, for peace, and for common ground today, it really is important for us to not be deceptive, to not use the same tactics that are being used by those who are trying to divide us and who are trying to make us hate one another. We, on the other hand, need to stand up and to speak loudly and to be honest about what we believe and why we believe it. The last section in the verse before I close, Jesus brings in this conversation about who to fear. And he points out, look, don't fear the ones who can destroy the body only, but fear the one who can destroy the body and the soul. So for me, this was a difficult passage. I came from a very conservative evangelical background, Pentecostal holiness group of Christians. And the way that I was taught to see this verse was to see it as, don't fear mankind who can destroy this physical body, yes, but ultimately it's God who, this soul that you are inside and is a different being altogether than the body, that God can destroy the soul and the body. And so really we should fear God. And I'm not suggesting that that's not a flavor or a message in this context. But what I feel is important is when we're talking about this 2,000-year-old ancient society, they didn't have these modern concepts that we do of, for instance, heaven and hell, and of the soul and the body. These are very Greek perspectives. Plato's Phaedo, I can't remember, but the immortality of the soul is something that was brought up. But for the Israelite people during this day, what Jesus is really saying is he uses the word soma to describe the body, and this is really the physical body. And so, yeah, it is talking about being able to injure and to kill just our body. But what I think he is emphasizing on this other word, and he uses sukein. And this word is what we get psyche from. So a lot of Christians may see this as the immortal soul, as this sort of, magical being of some sort that, floats away when we die or goes somewhere, becomes something. And really, in the mind of the people during that day, this word really meant more about your existence, everything that you are, your time on earth, everything that you've experienced. So what I think is being said here, and this is my stab at the translation, is that Jesus is really noting, look, don't worry about people who can damage the body and who can kill you this way, but worry about the ending of all your existence. And I suppose for those of us who come from a faith perspective and who look at it as God being the one who can do this, rather than it being this torturous hell where you burn forever and ever and ever, which to me is kind of a monstrous thing to do, what I think is interesting here is that he uses the word to destroy in Gehenna. And we've talked about this earlier before. When it translates hell here, it means this, it's really Gehenna, which is the word for this garbage dump outside the city of Jerusalem. And it's where there was constantly fire because they kept it there so that people could throw trash on it, and it helped to consume the trash and obviously anybody who had passed or animals that had passed. So it was a place that people understood is where things go to be destroyed. It is slightly easier for me to recognize maybe a being who has the power to destroy our existence, meaning put an end to us. And whereas humankind, can kill the body, this being however this God does it, is going to continue our existence in some other way. I don't know how that is. If it's a supreme being out there who's far more advanced than us, then I don't know. Maybe it's like the cloud where, our brains are uploaded there. I don't know. There could be a million ways to do it that we're unaware of. But suffice to say that Jesus is saying this person, however, can choose whether you're going to go on existing or whether that's it, you're done, and thrown onto the heap and destroyed. That to me is a different way of dealing with the end of life than torturing people forever and ever, which to me is so heinous that it's just hard to acknowledge. So, gosh, I know it feels like I was a bit of a red herring, but I wanted to talk about it, especially for those of you who come from faith backgrounds, and for those who don't, who come from maybe an atheist perspective. The message is here to essentially don't be afraid. In the end, we have an existence that's here and now, and we choose what to do with it. We choose how we're going to live it, and in that way, we shouldn't be afraid of people who may kill us in the end. We should fear not using our life in a way that is going to make the most out of the time that we have here. So let me read my translation, and then I'm going to just give you a couple walk-away points. Do not be worried about those who secretly conspire and say all kinds of false things about you. There is nothing in this world that stays hidden and that will not be made known. But you must do the opposite. We do not need silence or darkness to cover up our deeds. Those who are corrupt and who are lying will do everything that they can to hide and to avoid transparency. We have nothing to hide, so shout it all from the rooftops for everyone to hear. All that you have learned in secret, post it for the world to see. Do not run from those who are trying to destroy you personally, but who are unable to take your life. Be afraid only of those who are capable of destroying you personally and ending your life on this earth, throwing you into the landfill, as it were. 2 baby chickens, and this is going back to the sparrows. 2 baby chickens can be purchased for a couple of dollars, but not one of them will die without reason. For every single hair on your head is important, so don't worry. You are more valuable than chickens. In this day and age, right now, it's tough to spot who the liars are many times because everybody claims to be honest. Everybody claims to be not lying. So how in the world do you decide who is? We've talked about how to spot a wolf in sheep's clothing before, and that's one method. And if you want to hear more about that, I would encourage you to go back and look for that video. We talked a lot about looking at the fruits of their work to judge whether they're good or not. But for now, one of the ways that, and I think that Jesus is pointing out in this text, and that we can use today, is those who are hiding things, those who are corrupt and who are lying, ask for proof. Ask for transparency. If they keep things concealed, if they do not allow for transparency, if they are not able to provide proof for something, then they are hiding the truth that they are lying, and that they're doing something for unethical, unjust, or just inappropriate, selfish reasons. For those of us who are fighting for the truth, I want to reiterate something that it was an encouragement for me to think about, that we can continue to shout it from the rooftops. We don't have to worry about sharing the truth. We don't have to worry about speaking forth these virtues like peacemaking, of humility, of restraining ourselves from desolating our opponents, but loving them and being compassionate. We can shout this out loud because if they want us to be transparent, we can be, because we have not deceived. And if they want to test us or audit us, then they can do that too, because we're blameless and we're trying to do things for the good reasons and not for bad. And then last, there are people out there who will want to destroy your reputation or your personal life, because when we put the bar up, when we raise the bar, when we tell people what is better and a better way of living and a happier way of living and a happier way of being alive, that upsets people who are making money or benefiting inappropriately from this deception and from these lies. But they can't destroy us. They can't destroy our hearts or our being or that which makes us who we are. In fact, only we can do that. We are the only ones who can destroy how we feel about life and what our mission is and what we feel convicted to do and how to live. We are the only ones that can destroy that. Others can destroy our body. I hope this has been helpful for you. And this has actually been pretty helpful for me. This passage was a bit confusing to me for a while now, until now when I started looking at the language and the culture. It made a lot more sense to me, and I think is pretty applicable today. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We'll be meeting, Monday. It is Friday. Thank goodness. I mean, I love being with you, but I'm looking forward to the weekend. I'm sure you are as well. But until Monday at noon, we'll be live on Facebook. And I want to say to you that I love you. And I hope that you choose to love yourself. It's the only love in this world that we have any control over. And now I invite you to go about the rest of our day with me and through this weekend to love our neighbors the same way. Thank you.